is fabulous because we're two South Africans. So it's, I think this is the first for What's Your Story? So it's wonderful to have a South African guest with me today.
Good to have an accent we understand, right?
Well, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that today, the good old South African accent. And yeah, the confusion that we've put upon people, especially those that live in the UK and Europe, when it comes to actually understanding what did you just say, right? I'm sure we're going to cover a few things like that today. But Erica, thank you so much for taking time out today to come and chat with us and sharing your story. And to everyone else that's joined us, thank you as well. So Erica, you as I mean, if anybody goes and has a look at you on LinkedIn, they can see that you are a very experienced marketing professional. But where did your interest in moving into the marketing world? Where did that start? Was that something as a teenager, or was it only just later in life that you thought, you know what, I want to do marketing?
I think it came from university, actually. At the time, I went to study at UCT and I went to study accounting. And I chose UCT because it was the furthest university from home. I measured.
So UCT, sorry, I'm going to interject. UCT is
University of Cape Town.
University of Cape Town, okay.
So I measured with a ruler the furthest university I could get to from home because I'm from a mining town called Welkom and I wanted out. And UCT was it. I went to study accounting because those days you only did accounting or you were a doctor or, there were quite specific professions your parents wanted you to go into. But after a year, I did a vacation job and realized numbers and paperwork were probably not going to suit my personality. So I changed my degree to marketing, which was the easiest switch. So I kind of fell into it by accident. But then I'm really very curious. So my curiosity about what makes people tick, how humans think, how to use that to make them buy things really enhanced my marketing knowledge. And I suppose that's what kicked it all off.
Now that's interesting because a lot of the work I do with communication, and I have found that something that was really missing from my educational, you could say, curriculum or educational career was the understanding of the physiology and the psychology around communication. Now, you talk about human behavior. Is that something that was actually taught to you while you were at university when it came to marketing?
It's not taught specifically, but you can start reading into it. So when you get taught what works in a print ad, for example, you get taught how people's eyes move. So it starts at the top left, moves across, image first, then the headline. And so you start understanding if that's how the eyes move, what is it that we need to do? You start understanding what picture will draw them. A face works really, really well. Hands are also very, very powerful. Um, Dogs, people love dogs. So you just start understanding those kind of things. So it's not a specific lecture, but if you read the behind the lines, you can start interpreting it. And that's really what I was doing.
Now, I'm just looking at you because I can see that your face is starting to get that wonderful glow just from this fantastic weather that we are experiencing. And I should say I'm in the south. I'm in the southwest of London. And Erica, you are in Oxfordshire, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
So we are experiencing like 35 degrees on average for the last week, and there's this promise of cool weather coming. It was supposed to rain, but it did rain a little bit, but all it's done, I think, is just aggravated the humidity. So but you were telling me a short story about you driving home.
Yeah, I was actually in London yesterday. I went to see a client and I took the bus actually for the first time since February. Masks on, caught the tube, was actually fine, just empty. It was like a ghost town. But on my way back, and it was hot, 37 degrees, baking, lovely sun. I mean, I'm still South African. I miss the sunshine. So I'm very happy with this weather. But then there was this flash flood, thunder, lightning, full on. If you've ever lived in Johannesburg, it's a Johannesburg storm. 30 minutes, downpour. There were trees and leaves and sticks falling on my car as I drove home. Flash flood, the road outside flooded. Basically got home. In getting from my car to my house, it's 2 steps. I got drenched. And then as soon as I got inside, over. Very much like Johannesburg weather.
Yeah. It reminded me of the last time I was in South Africa. It was a few years ago, and we were driving from the West Rand, Krugersdorp area, and we were driving back towards Johannesburg way. And my children were in the car. My wife was driving, and we got hit by one of those storms. And then it started to hail,
Yeah.
and I'd forgotten just the intensity, that noise of that hail when it's pounding your car. And then, you know, when you drive under the bridges and there's just cars everywhere under the bridges because you've got all these people trying to protect the bodywork. But I think, you know, when you start to see video footage of cars and windows getting smashed and getting absolutely pummeled, you realize just how destructive Mother Nature can be.
But it needs to be quick, Andy. It's quick, you know, and the sun
quick.
comes again and it's done.
And then you can take your car off to the bodywork center and see how much it's going to cost you to get fixed.
I mean, the one thing about the UK is the rain, when it does rain, is relentless. It's months of rain and soft, gentle, you know, like drip, 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 but months of it. You don't get a break. I prefer the fast. It's done. Sun is back out.
Absolutely. And I think that's what, I mean, many South Africans, and it was actually, I was reading on the Facebook group, South Africans living in London, and there was a lady that said, you know, when she was talking about her experience of moving to London, and everyone said, why do you want to move to London? All it does is rain. It's a mud island. Why would you want to go there? And she says, yeah, it's raining all the time at the moment. We're really struggling with this heat. But it did make me chuckle when I read that. So, if I may ask, when did you move to the UK?
Been here 6 years now.
6 years.
Yeah.
Goodness me. And what was the move like for you?
Well, it was a company move. So my company at the time moved us over, which was really great. So we had the job to walk into, lots of support. Really struggled with the weather. I did. But I traveled because I looked after Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I got to go to Greece and Dubai and Oman. So whenever I was missing sunshine, I so that, you know, other than the weather, the rest of it's been fabulous. My kids love it here. The safety, and I don't know, you've been here much longer than me, the safety factor of my kids can hop on a bike and go, and I don't worry about them. I don't wonder, will they make it home? We don't have a fence around our house. We don't have a barbed wire fence or an electric fence around our house. You know, we actually, if you live in South Africa, you learn automatic behaviors. And it's hard to explain this to someone who hasn't been there. But you grow up with automatic behaviors, things like don't put your handbag on the front seat of your car, right? You stick it in your boot. Don't wear visible jewelry while you're driving. Drive around the block before you pull into your yard to make sure no one's following you. Check all your doors and windows twice before you go to sleep. So there's just automatic things that you do to keep yourself safe. When we arrived here, we carried on doing that because it was automatic. And it took us about 3 months to figure out, hold on, we don't need to do that anymore. And we were saving 30 minutes a day by not doing those things. It was a 30-minute a day saving, and it was so amazing. We did swing too far. One of the neighbors woke us up one morning. We'd left the house keys in the front door overnight. So we did relax far too much and have to go, okay, that's too much. Back to the middle. You need to be sensible. But it's so hard to explain to someone how safe it feels here. And how you know, especially with kids, you can just, they can be, and they can run around and ride bikes and go to the park without me, where in South Africa, they couldn't even go into the front yard without me, you know? So that's
it is quite sad in that regard, but I mean, I've got my kids, I think you actually start to become, I don't know if I would say too relaxed, but I think my children have got very comfortable with that. And it's quite a challenge when we go back to South Africa because, you know, they just want to go out and do things, and you sort of feel a little bit hesitant, which is quite sad in a way, isn't it? Don't you agree? You know,
it's practical, right?
I guess you could say that. But we all live in hope that there will be change. That's the big thing. So do you still have family in Cape Town? Do you go back, or Welkom, I should say?
Well, my mom just recently moved to Pietermaritzburg, so I've just got my mom left. My sisters left before me, so they were in America and Sweden. And then all my friends, I've got friends all over, so I do go back as often as I can just to hang out and eat red meat that's really good, and dive into the sea, and drink great wine.
So scuba diving. When you say diving, you mean scuba diving?
No, that's too scary for me. But
Okay.
just a little swim.
So working in marketing, but you've had quite a few changes from working for a company and then ultimately to where you are today, running your own marketing company. What made that decision for you in terms of leaving the paid world of a salary and now, running your own business?
It was actually quite a practical decision. I'm quite a practical person, actually. My daughter, my eldest, was starting high school, which is, I don't know what it's called here.
Well, secondary school.
Secondary school. Thank you for the help. And I think it's hard for girls. It was hard for me. And so I wanted to be around more. With my job, I traveled a lot, as I said. I was working in London. So literally, I left home at 6 in the morning. I'd get home at 7, 8 at night, just saw my kids for supper. So I wanted to be around for them more. And also wanted more flexibility in terms of my own time. And it was time. It felt right. It was it's been interesting. I've never worked harder in my life. I can honestly say that. I've never worked harder. But at the same time, I've never had more fun. And all the free time I thought I was going to have, well, that didn't materialize yet. I'm still working on that. But at least I feel like I'm working for my own goal. It's my own passion. I don't feel annoyed when I'm working late. Sometimes when you have a boss, you feel like, oh, why aren't they working late? I'm all here by myself. But it's a different feeling, and I'm really loving it.
Do you think do your kids look to you? Do you think, could you compare or see a difference between your children looking at you working full time versus managing your own business? What I mean by that, do they look for you and think, wow, one day I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own company?
Well, probably not. My kids are only 10 and 12. And they think I'm a housewife who spends all day talking to my friends. That's what they think I do. And it's because I have great relationships with my clients. So if they're outside my office door listening, and we do laugh a lot, we joke a lot. I mean, I really build I believe in relationships. That's so important to me. And so it probably does sound like I'm having great fun all day laughing with my friends. And I'm home all the time. I'm home with them all the time. So especially during lockdown, they've had me doing the homeschooling. And so, yeah, I'm a housewife who has fun with my friends all day long. So if that's what they want from a job, go for it, because that's the best job description ever, right?
Well, you made me laugh because my children are exactly the same. I'm the one I keep telling them, please be quiet. I'm doing some filming, or I'm going to be doing a meeting online, and the same sort of reaction. But all you seem to be doing is laughing all the time. And I'm thinking, well, why can't we have some fun while we're working? So yeah, that absolutely resonates. Now,
I went to do a workshop with a client about 2 weeks ago in London, and I packed my bag, and I've got whiteboards, and I've got whiteboard markers and post-it notes and colored paper, and so it looks like a real stationery. And they're like, "Oh, we thought you're going to work." I'm like, "I am. I'm going to work."
that's interesting because you touch on something that I think people in the corporate world, especially working in the offices, you're quite restricted in terms of being creative. And I think when you give people the opportunities to say, well, instead of a whiteboard and these whiteboard pens, here, use some paints, use some crayons, use these, and people go, oh, this is nice, this is different. And this was something we were actually experimenting, which was communicating using different tools and different ways to communicate. And then along came COVID. So yes, now we're doing so much more online.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. Oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
Now, I was just going to say, people love that. And actually, when I was in the corporate world, I was often the loudest one. So they would keep me and my team in a corner because we would be very disruptive to everyone else in the office. And I always needed whiteboards and colored paper. And we were always surrounded by pictures and magazines because we would cut up stuff and do collages. So they always put us in a corner so we would not disturb all the accountants and finance people and, the boring people.
I actually trained as an accountant, Erica.
There we go. Boring. Got it.
Well, really? You think accountants are boring?
Now, I've met 3 accountants now who are not boring, but that's still the minority of the ones I've met.
Well, that's a fair generalization. Anyway, so let's talk. I want to go back to being a South African living in the UK. And the one thing, we have a very distinctive accent, even though sometimes we do get confused with our other Antipodean counterparts, those being in Australia and New Zealand. And I'll never forget, actually, when we'd been living here for a few years, and we went as a family across to see some South African friends that were living in America, in San Diego, and we went to Disneyland in Los Angeles. And towards the end of the day, my youngest she must have been about 3, going on 4 years old, and she was playing with some other children, and this American lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "No, I'm from London." And she said to me, "I thought I recognized that accent." And I thought, goodness me, is that I certainly would not say that I have a London accent, but that's the beautiful thing, about London, is they are over 300 languages spoken in the city, and it really does represent the world. But the South African accent, what challenges did you have coming to the UK? Perhaps not necessarily words, people can hear what you said, but some of the phrases and the colloquialism that South Africans use.
I think my biggest difficulty, and I still have it today, is pants versus trousers. In South Africa, we say pants. They're pants, right? But in the UK, that means underwear.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, oh, I didn't wear my pants today or whatever, you get very quizzical looks here. My kids are very good now. They correct me all the time. Trousers, mom, trousers. But trousers sound so formal. It sounds like what you wear to a funeral or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't resonate with me. And the other one is circles and roundabouts. Roundabouts? Because Welkom, where I'm from, is only circles. It's known for its circles. So we grew up with circles. I learned how to ride around. Circles with robots here. Oh, robots, traffic lights, sorry. So there are a few words where I get corrected quite often by my kids now. They got the language down pat. I'm still stuck in my ways.
Well, it's actually interesting because we know it's not just South Africans, because Americans, they use the term pants as well. And I was listening to a communication speaker the other day, and he's from Sweden, and he was running a lunchtime workshop on YouTube, and he was advising people that one of the most important things about communicating online is that you still need to dress appropriately. So he said, online, he said, "Please make sure you wear pants." And it did make me laugh for that very reason, because I'm thinking, well, yes, we do hope that you dress appropriately for an online meeting. But robots, yes, we still get teased, don't we? Oh, you guys have robots in South Africa, don't you? That is the one. I think there's favorites. We all have favorites. Now and just now, and are those terms that you've used and caused confusion? Never. Okay.
All the time. They're involved, aren't they? We get talked. That's how we talk.
And then there's our classic brai.
A brai, absolutely. Which is nothing like the barbecues here. Definitely not.
Go on. Help our audience out, Erica. What is the difference between a brai and a barbecue?
A brai has proper meat on. It will never have a hamburger patty on it. Never, ever.
I think even the word patty is something that is only used in South Africa. I haven't heard anybody outside of South Africa, using the term patty. I think it's just a burger. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Someone help me out. But you're right. And there was actually, again, I'm going back to that fabulous Facebook group. If you're a South African and you are not on South Africans living in London or South Africans in the UK, do yourself a favor and join them. But there was a really good thread that went out the other day, which I purposefully put out there, asking what is the strangest thing that you've seen someone cook on a braai? And the responses were hysterical. But I, for one, I grew up in a meat-eating family.
Yep.
So, and I've always associated with friends that have all been meat eaters. So we always had these strange views of vegetarians that would come along and suddenly have a vegetable shaped into a meat product and feeling entitled that they should have their vegetables cooked on your braai. And it's fascinating when people actually, and my views have changed on this because I know that you can cook some amazing stuff now on the braai that isn't meat. But I was surprised when someone said watermelon. And I have never, to this day, thought about cooking a slice of watermelon on the braai. Now you're shaking your head. Have you tried it?
You can't cook watermelon.
Well, I'm telling you, I've got to try this out because someone is adamant that this is a vegan staple for braais, watermelon on the braai. So interesting.
Sound like something I want to try.
Yeah, and then the other one was, I thought this was actually really nice. Now I haven't tried this, but aubergines, thick slices of aubergines, and roasting those on the fire, which I think, yeah, got to try that as well. Frankfurters, banned. You cannot cook hot dog frankfurters on the braai. No way, right? And it goes along pretty much with those pork sausages that don't actually ever cook properly. They just need
terrible.
to. Yeah. Someone said fish fingers, believe it or not.
On the braai?
Yes, fish fingers on the braai. I mean, he must have been desperate. But yeah, I don't. And I think we have that term of endearment, the tongue master. Usually it's assigned to a man. And I'm sure you've had your frustrations as well when it's stereotypically the man that manages the braai, cooks everything, right? But at the end of the day, when everyone's going home, they say, hey, Jack, thanks for the braai. It was amazing. Forgetting about all the other work that's done in the background in the preparation of the meat and all the salads and everything else that goes with it. You laughing and you smiling, Erica. I may have touched on a sore point. I hope not.
It's just normal, isn't it? That's how it is.
Now, you have done some interesting things in your career as well. And one of the things that I was quite surprised to hear about, and I know that you have done this talk in the business networking world as well, about being a bodyguard. And I have to know more. Please share your story.
Yes, well, I worked as a bodyguard for 9 years in Cape Town. And the way it came about, I paid for my studies at the University of Cape Town by working at night. So I was a security guard at night, and that paid for my studies in the daytime. And I mean, I say I worked, I was really spoiled. My colleagues would often take my patrols for me as long as I made cookies and made them tea. You know, you're talking sexism. It was to my advantage. I loved it. But something you need to know about me, and I'm excessively stubborn, and I hate being told I can't do something. So one day I heard some of the guys talking about doing a bodyguard course because the security guard didn't pay much. And if you were raising a family, it was quite tough for them. So bodyguard was sort of the next step up, not bouncer. Can I just be clear, please? Not a bouncer. This is not the job where you're standing outside a nightclub and refusing people entry or kicking them out when they're drunk. Not that. Also, this is also known as close protection officer, is the more official term for it. Anyway, they were discussing this, and when I popped my head in to listen, they said girls can't do that, which was red flag to all. I just had to. It was like, No, of course I can. And so really, I became a bodyguard on a dare. Is the truth. It wasn't part of my life plan or what I was thinking about. It was just like, I'm going to do it. You said I can't, so I will. 6 months training, fell in love with it. And then the company that trained us offered me the job afterwards. And so I took it. So yeah, 9 years later, it was fantastic. Really an important part of my history that I really love.
Are there any particular stories that you are allowed to share? Did you do any celebrities?
So when you start working, you get two choices as a bodyguard. The one is full time, and that's when you do your big names, your celebrities, your presidents, etc. But you got to give up your life. And in my 20s, I wasn't quite willing to do that. So I took the part-time bodyguard job. So nope, you're not going to know anyone I looked after. There were a few CEOs, businessmen. So probably if I drop their names, if you know any South African history, you may know them. Um, but that's probably as important as my clients were, although each client was important to me, right? I did a lot of tourists. South Africa has a bad rap for tourists about crime, etc. So tourists were willing to pay for me to look after their wallets and walk around, and visited Robben Island a few times, Table Mountain. I mean, there's beautiful sights in South Africa. Um, Not so nice ones, abused wives, trying to get away from their husbands. I did some not nice ones. I did a few hostile dismissals, as they're called in the corporate world, where they want to dismiss someone, but they feel that the person may get violent. So they hire me to stand around and make sure that the dismissal goes smoothly and no one gets hurt.
Wow.
So yeah, it was very varied in what I did, but it was fun.
Now, how did you keep those people safe? Were you armed? Did you have what any restraints? I mean,
I was armed, yes. I learned in my 6 months of training. I did armed combat, unarmed combat, bomb detection. But mostly what I did, and most of it is, again, the passion that I bring into my marketing job, is understanding your clients. You spend a lot of time researching your clients. So, for example, one of the people I looked after was a furrier. And so spent a lot of time researching him. He was quite flamboyant. He liked being in the public eye. So definitely was not going to go down dark corridors and sneak around. He wanted to be where the paparazzi was. He wanted to get his photo taken. But probably was going to run away screaming if there was any loud noise, etc. So you spend a lot of time understanding how they will behave so you can adjust. Then you understand the attacker. In his case, it was animal activists. They didn't use guns, um, but bombs was their thing. So you understand how they like to work, and they'll be loud. So they'll make a big publicity stunt out of the attack. They'll want to be in the public eye. So it won't be, in a dark parking lot, for example. They'd rather do it out in public where they're going to be seen. So you spend a lot of time analyzing both your clients and the threat so that you can prevent, because that's your aim. Your aim is for your client to be alive by the end of your job. So you do everything you can to prevent an attack happening. Now, all of that analysis and understanding of human behavior is what I bring into marketing today.
now you're also a very calm person, so I guess that helped you in managing your own stress levels.
I
Because,
guess, I mean, I've got a very active brain. And when I'm struggling with something boring like tax or something like that, it can really mull around for hours. And what I found is when you're on the job, you cannot physically think of anything else but your client and their safety for their time. So any mundane noise is switched off. But that means when you get back to it, and I'm sure we've all had this experience, is when you come back to a problem with a fresh mind, suddenly it doesn't feel so bad. The path is clear. You can get it done. So I actually found the job as stress relief for me. It was quite good.
and was it easy saying goodbye to being a bodyguard? It sounded like you got so much out of it, but how did that come to an end?
Yeah, that was not easy. When I was a bodyguard, my then boyfriend thought it was very special. So he would be very proud to tell all his friends about his girlfriend, the bodyguard. But when we got married, he realized that lying in bed wondering if your wife was going to come home safely. It was a different attitude to thinking about your girlfriend. And so once I got married, we agreed that it wasn't the right thing anymore. And then I had kids, and then I mean, putting your life at risk once you have kids is a whole different ball game, right?
Mm. Now, I wonder if that's taking you to a hobby that, I don't know if hobby is the right word, but with your fascination and interest and in human behavior,
Curiosity.
and the fact that you have become a subject matter expert in the use of LinkedIn, and I know you use this quite extensively in helping and working with your clients, but you've come across a lot of people that pretend to be somebody else.
I have.
And I want you can, I mean, this was something that you explained to me in more detail, but let's welcome your story around hunting for catfish. So please tell us more.
Yeah, so I'm very curious, Andy. I need to know things. I need to understand things. I need to make it work, right? And when I moved into my own business, so before that, LinkedIn, and I think for most people, LinkedIn is your online CV. And that's what it was for me for many years. My CV was there when I was in the job market. I'd go update it and have a look around, but it wasn't very active. But once I moved into my own business and I started investigating where I can find clients, LinkedIn was an obvious place for business to business. And anyone who's not on LinkedIn for business to business, you must be. It's the best place. So so I started becoming more active. This was about October last year when I started. And in order to do that, you need to up your connection level. So at that stage, I was only at about 1,000 connections, and I needed more. So I started accepting connection requests from more and more people, as well as looking for people. But every now and again, I'd get an odd one. Hey, beautiful. Hi, sexy. Hello, you. And I'd be like, oh, this is LinkedIn. It's a business site. And I wouldn't respond, but it would just spark my curiosity. But after a while, my curiosity kept me awake at night because I'm like, does this work? Does this work? Because I look after quite a few clients' profiles on LinkedIn, and it's work to be on LinkedIn. You have to create your profile, you have to keep it updated, you have to search for the right connections, you have to send them messages. It's actually work. So for people to be doing this, they must be getting something out of it, is my logic. So I needed to understand this. I first asked one of my male colleagues to help me out. And I said, will he just randomly message 100 women, hey, beautiful, and then give me the response rate? He refused. He was worried about his reputation or some such nonsense. So I had to take it on myself. And so what I did is I started responding. And I went in eyes open with this sole measure that I want to calculate the amount of time till they ask me for money or data, because that's really what's valuable, right? We have value to these catfish, and the term catfish comes from dating sites where people use fake personas, fake profile pictures, but this is LinkedIn, which is business, right? Anyway, so started playing with them and testing the waters. And some are very quick. You get the money request within a day or two, and some take longer. I had my longest one was 6 months before he started asking me for money. But really just trying to unpack the signs, like how do you identify them up front? And I've gone quite a long way in being able to spot one straight away. And I sometimes test myself now. I'll be like, I think you're one. Let me respond and see. And then when he responds back with, and guys, this is a trigger. If they say, what's your name on LinkedIn, please block and delete. Because as you all know, your name is very visible on LinkedIn. So if they say, what's your name, block, delete. Also, if they ask where you're from, block, delete. If they ask, what's your job, block, delete. Because your job is also very visible on LinkedIn. So those are some key ones. But there's others. Look at their profile picture, how many connections they have. They usually have only ever had one job. Their jobs are army, oil rig specialist, Jobs that mean there's a reason for them not to be able to phone you. So you never hear their voice or have video calls because they're in the army and it's secret and the enemy will, I don't know, track you down. It's all nonsense. But anyway, but yeah, so now I've gotten quite good at spotting them, and I'm trying to spread the news because there are so many people that are getting trapped, Andy, and are actually giving them money. And then it's a double whammy because their heart is broken because they really fall in love with these guys. If it's even a guy, I'm doubtful it's a guy, but and they've lost money, right? So the shame of it is really really heartbreaking. So I'm trying to educate people to just be more aware, even on LinkedIn. I mean, I think people expect it like on dating sites, but people don't expect it on LinkedIn, and it's happening there too.
But that must be quite exhausting for you. I mean, you talk about you had one catfish that you were working with, in inverted commas, for 6 months. I mean, that's quite a long time to keep playing that game, isn't it?
Well, I must admit,
If calling it a game is the right word to use.
he almost convinced me I was wrong. This is how good he was. He almost convinced me I was wrong. The others are usually quick. He was brilliant. He started asking me about marketing. He started engaging about my actual real job. He was interested in what I did. He was very, very good, to the point that I almost thought, okay, this is a real guy. I've made a mistake. And then luckily he made a mistake and phoned me, and his voice and picture did not match in the least. And I think he realized at that point that he'd lost me. So then the money request came immediately afterwards. And I was like, okay, good.
But what sort of sums of money are we talking? Are we talking a lot, or is it?
They're very manipulative. So they start small. So it'll be like, um, and so something about them, there'll always be um, some backstory, some dramatic backstory, like the wife died in tragic circumstances, or they were left at the altar and they devastated and they'll never trust another woman again except you because your LinkedIn profile picture, Erica, says you're the only woman who will never let me down. Anyone's looking for a great photographer that spells trust, talk to me because my LinkedIn photo says that. But they start small. They'll be like, and they always have like one or two kids. They have kids to try and play on your emotions. So it'll be like, oh, my son needs to go on the school tour and I can't get money out and it's just 100. Can you lend it to me? I'll pay you back. So they start with small amounts and it'll be very manipulative. One of them was, my mother's just passed away in the Philippines and I need to go and wrap up her estate. Can you lend me the money for the plane ticket? And then I'll pay you back when I'm there, you know. Very manipulative, quite reasonable, like nothing outrageous. So those are the money requests. The data requests are much more subtle. You need to be careful. It'll be like, oh, I've just got $3.4 million in compensation because I was shot in the leg by the enemy. And I want to send it to you, Erica, because even though we've been chatting for 3 days, I love you. So please give me your address, your ID number, your date of birth, and all your personal details so I can make sure all this cash gets to you. So those are the subtle ones that because they're getting your data.
Mm.
And especially here, how easy it is to open loans with that data. You can get credits. There's so much, right? So the data ones you have to be very careful about.
Has anybody said to you're a bit crazy doing this, like playing a dangerous game?
I'm very lucky. My business partner tells me I'm crazy every single day. But I needed to know. I needed the answer. I can't sleep if I don't know. Now I know, so I feel better.
Yeah.
And I was lucky with him. Every time these guys are very manipulative and they use really good manipulation language. And even though I knew what I was doing, it's a very thin line. And luckily, my partner would every day tell me, you're not special. They're talking to 55 women just like you.
Mm.
This is not about you, because it's so easy to fall. The one thing I will say that kept me sane is when my daughter was born, and the first thing you do is buy books, and fairy tales are the thing. But I started reading these fairy tales thinking, I don't want to teach my daughter this stuff. And anyone who's had kids and you go back through fairy tales and you just try and really, and think of Cinderella. This is the one that kept me most sane. The prince did not recognize her without her shoes on. Come on, really? That's the story. She wasn't wearing the shoes, and he had to go and fit the shoe on 100 million women, whatever it was, to find her. So that's the thing with these catfish. If it's too good to be true, no one falls in love with your your LinkedIn profile picture, guys. Just it's not. It can't be. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe if you look like Laura Croft or Julia Roberts or something, but you know, it's not logical. No one falls in love with you over 2 days of chatting on LinkedIn Messenger and wants to give you 3.4 million in dollars, right? It's just keep logic in. And for me, holding on to that Cinderella story is, it's not logical. Just hold on to that, and you can see your way through the lies.
Wow, that's thanks so much for sharing that. But let's bring it a little bit back to what you're doing today. You regard yourself as a marketing detective, and you love helping clients, particularly figure out, who is their target market, and you spend a lot of time supporting clients and figuring out who is the right client for you. But tell us a little bit more, and also how could anyone get in contact with you, Erica, if they wish to? What's the best way that they can contact you?
Sure. So yes, my passion is absolutely that marketing can be easy if you market to the right person. Most people think marketing is randomly throwing your message out there and somebody will bite. But marketing is actually selling what you have to the person who wants it. It's that clear. And it's all about communication, Andy, as you and I often talk about. Communicating what you have to the person who wants it. And if the person wants it, that's an easy conversation to have. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to do objection handling and like all this horrible hard work stuff. Phone them 50 times, leave messages. Why haven't you called me back? What's going on? If they want what you have, it's easy. So I help my clients find that. And the way people can find me, so my website is themarketingdetectiveagency.com. My hashtag on LinkedIn is Marketing Detective. So hashtag Marketing Detective. You can find all my posts and you can find me there.
Fantastic. We'll actually share all that information as well. But I just wanted to stop and see if anybody had any questions that they'd like to throw at Erica. Perhaps some questions about how do you become a bodyguard. No questions just yet. What have you found? I want to just go back. We do have a little bit more time, but I want to go back a little bit between the distinctive characteristics of South Africans and the way we do business, particularly, and talking about you being a successful businesswoman and the fact that we've just celebrated International Women's Day recently, the beginning of the week. I want to ask you this question. Have you found that people have found you to be quite, like as a South African woman, found to be quite strong? I'm not going to use the word, well, I will say the word aggressive because I've heard this being used before, but there is something about a tendency for strong female businesswomen to be very direct. Is that a fair statement to make? Have people said that to you before?
Well, I mean, I believe in relationships, as I said. So when I start working with a client, we test the waters because I am direct and I am going to say it like it is. And if you are going to be thin-skinned, it's probably not going to work in either of our best interests. So yeah, and some people like that. People want, they don't want you to just roll your eyes when actually you want to say, I'm just picturing the tube now. It always drives me crazy. When they see everyone's sitting and some poor old pregnant lady standing, no one says anything. People just roll their eyes here instead of just saying, hey, 17-year-old boy, stand up and give the pregnant woman your seat. Like, no one will say it. They'll just stand and roll their eyes and go, and hope someone picks it up, right? I find it hilarious. But the opposite is, I think as South Africans, we're also quite touchy-feely. We have a much closer personal space than the Brits do generally. So that's the other thing. I'm a hugger. COVID has been very difficult for me. No hugging allowed. But my clients and I hug. We do. When we were allowed to hug, we'll see when we're allowed to again. But I form relationships. I know about my clients. I know about their kids. I know when their kids' birthdays are. I know what they like. I know what they eat, what they don't eat. And our conversations will always start with that. Like, oh, your kid had a soccer match this weekend. How'd that go? Because for me, relationships, and that helps me understand my client. And if I'm understanding my clients, I then know how to approach them. So my aggressiveness can also be tailored, if that makes sense. If I know my client's going through a difficult time, I may hold myself back a little bit, still give the truth, but maybe in a more subtle way. But that's communication, isn't it? It's all communication.
I know Elon Musk has a fantastic saying or quote, and he says that many business people look to their clients or their customers for that feedback that makes them feel good. They look for that positive feedback. Whereas he argues that you should go to your clients and say, how can I do things differently? What would you like me to change? And that's hard, because the work I do, you are providing feedback, and people don't like feedback. And I have found that people aren't ready for feedback. And that's the thing. But if you prepare someone for feedback, a bit like what you just said right at the very beginning, say, look, I'm direct, right? This is who I am. I'm going to give you direct feedback throughout our relationship. And I think when you prepare people for that, it makes it just so much easier. It's like I use the analogy of it. It's a bit like putting on a body of armor, right? And when you put that body armor on and you say, right, give me that feedback, you prepared for it and you can take it. But I've found it's interesting on human behavior. You can have a 97% satisfaction rate of something, and then someone can look at the 3% and then get really upset with that 3% of people that didn't like what they did. But when you read it and you have a look at that feedback, it's often so important and so useful.
Yeah. I must admit, I feel my job is making my customers comfortable with their marketing. So I don't try and create dependence. I don't want them to not be able to do marketing without me. But if we find the sweet spot of that target client, where they are, how they like to communicate, what they want to talk about, then my client can carry on. And what I love is seeing them feel good after the interaction. They feel relieved or happy, or that for me is where I get my thrill, is when my customer is going, that makes sense, Erica. In fact, one of them said to me this week, they're like, Erica, every call with you, you bring your Erica energy. And I'm like, oh, I love that. That's nice. Yes. I bring my Erica energy. Love it.
Well, there you go. You've got your own brand in the making there, Erica Energy. How's that going to be sold? Is it going to be sold in bottles? Oh, brilliant. Are we coming to the end? Erica, it's been absolutely fantastic. It's so wonderful to have you as a guest today on What's Your Story. And I should say to everybody else, please do follow the work that we're doing, all part of Speak Your Brand. What's Your Story is every 2 weeks. It's a fortnightly guest show event where I invite speakers. If you would like to come and tell a story on What's Your Story, please get in touch with us. The easiest way actually to do that is to go to Facebook and go to the group Speak Your Brand. And those that have joined us today on Crowdcast, you can see there's a call to action button. If you click on that, you can find the URL link to that Facebook group, but it's very easy. Facebook.com/groups/Speak Your Brand. It's free to join. Please do so. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please do leave a comment if you wish to. And please get in touch with Erica as well. Follow her on LinkedIn, but make sure your LinkedIn profile looks good. Right? and remind us, Erica, remind us again those hashtags and your contact details for the Marketing Detective, please.
So hashtag Marketing Detective, as you said. So follow me on that, or just the marketingdetectiveagency.com.
Erica, absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. It's been fun. Chat soon.
It has been fun indeed. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. We will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Until then, please keep telling your stories, because your story matters, and you telling your story in your own voice matters more. My name's Andrew Coppin. This is Speak Your Brands. What's your story from My London Voice? See you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.